Welcome to the Subjective Professor podcast, where we reject coercion and hypocrisy. This is episode 294, and we're going to talk about presidential pardons in general, and then the release of the JFK, RFK, and MLK files. Okay, so a brief list. I Googled and found a list of Biden pardons, President Biden, who he pardoned. And let's see, let's just highlight some of them and then touch on a lot of the others. So, Biden's siblings and their spouses. So James Biden, Frances Biden, sister Valerie Biden, Owens, sister-in-law Sarah Jones Biden, and brother-in-law John Owens. And the rumor is basically, it is said that when Biden laundered a lot of the money that he was receiving from all of his insider deals and shady deals that he made in Ukraine and China, that he sort of spread it to his family. And so now he's pardoning them. That's the rumor. Okay. Then preemptive pardon for Anthony Fauci, who oversaw the National Institute of Allergy and Infection, and basically was in charge of a lot of the policy during the Cervasis lockdowns. And so he pushed a lot of bad policies and then defended himself and said he did nothing wrong, did not lie, didn't hide anything. But of course, he is guilty of pretty much a lot of that. At least people want to basically accuse him of those things. Then Mark Milley, he was a general, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff during Trump's first presidency. What's really interesting is that he hated Trump. And when it was rumored that Trump was going to start a nuclear war, he contacted his opposite in China, I believe, and basically assured them that he never would have let him do it. And so here we have someone who's Joint Chiefs of Staff chairman and actively working against Trump, also doing the very thing that Trump was accused of doing, which was part of what it is to be a president. And so they went to town like he was a Russian asset. And here you have someone basically undermining the president uh, and communicating with the so-called, uh, you know, enemy. At least that's the way some people would portray China. Then you have members and staff of the Select Committee to investigate January 6th attack on the United States Capitol. Lawmakers involved in the final report were Chair Benny Thompson, Liz Cheney, Adam Schiff. Let's see, other names that I could recognize. Adam Kissinger, right? There were other names as well, but why preemptively pardon them? Very interesting. And of course, we know that he pardoned his son, Hunter Biden. I looked at some of his other pardons. There was a whole long list of pardons on December 12th, 2024. A lot of drug dealers. And apparently, I saw in another news story somewhere, I was going through as many as I could, and I don't have the references, but that a lot of these drug dealers are nonviolent offenders. April 24th, 2024, still more drug-related offenders. And we're talking about distributors of cocaine, methamphetamine, money laundering, banking fraud, embezzlement, etc. So that type of crime that he pardoned is kind of interesting considering that, Joe Biden himself went hard after drug dealers. I think the three-strike rule might have been in his era. I don't know if he was directly responsible for that. I should probably just Google that. Hold on. Yeah, it wasn't that. It's the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act of 1991, where there are claims that crime was cut in half as a result. But we all know that crime just increased as a result, right? So you're going after certain offenders, and so you'll imprison more of them. some people would even say that these crime laws, uh, you know, resulted in a lot of arrests of minority offenders. So, you know, there's lots of debate about that. And as an anarcho-capitalist myself, anything that is has no victim shouldn't be a crime. Now you're just sort of legislating morality and sort of trying to control human behavior, and it just doesn't work, right? So it's just interesting to me that, earlier in his life, he went after drug offenders and went after them hard, and then he's at least I don't know if he was aware he was, but he's pardoning a lot of them in 2024. So that's and in comparison, you have so far, at least this time around, Trump pardons. Now, I did remember that in his first term, he did pardon his someone related to him, like a father of father of his son-in-law, right? So that was pretty controversial. I remember that. But so far this time around, he pardoned two DC police officers, Terrence Sutton and Andrew Zabowski, the lieutenant who was supervising Terrence Sutton, and they were involved in uh, killing and then trying to cover up someone that Sutton had hit when he was chasing someone else. And it's sort of a little outrageous. The police union applauded it, right? They were happy that he did it. But I was trying to figure out why he would. Like, I was reading the story to try to figure out, were they innocent in some way? And I didn't see that at all. It was clearly Terrence Sutton was chasing after someone in his car, and in the process, he hit someone, a woman who died. And so, as a result, and apparently the two of them tried to cover it up. But they got busted, and so they were both sentenced. And I think it was to offset the fact that he pardoned more than 1,500 people involved in the January 6th riots, which a lot of people will call an insurrection. Okay. So I think it was to offset that. So it's very interesting. But otherwise, I couldn't find any reason why he would have pardoned those two officers. He did pardon Ross Ulbricht. We talked about that in yesterday's episode. I thought that was, he promised to do that. And again, so going back to the Biden pardons, the fact that they were all nonviolent drug dealers, it's weird to say that, but because I grew up in the time when the drug war was heavily ramped up, and so don't do drugs and DARE program, basically police coming to your school and trying to tell everyone that they shouldn't do drugs, but in the process introducing drug use to a lot of young kids, and so drug use went up. So I lived through that whole weird time where you're going to see Cheech and Chong uh, marijuana movies at the same time. People are getting arrested for possession. It was a very strange time. I couldn't make sense of it. I didn't use drugs, so I didn't really care, but it was really confusing for someone who is not actually in it. I think it was confusing for people who are actually using as well, involved in all of that. In any case, so although it may look like Biden was pardoning uh, drug offenders, but on the other hand, they should never have been, uh, arrested, perhaps, right? But then it's just weird because it's a lot of them probably ended up in the way they did because of the rules and laws and regulations that he had pushed earlier in his political career. Okay, so in other words, just because he pardoned a lot of drug offenders doesn't necessarily mean that it's bad, at least in my eyes. Again, because the whole drug war thing was just kind of, it shouldn't have been done, right? Prohibition never works, and you just end up with a lot of collateral damage. All right, so it is said that preemptive pardons assumes guilt, uh, guilt of people not yet indicted or accused of crimes, but they know they're coming, and so you're going to pardon them preemptively, which is a kind of interesting thing. I don't know if it has ever happened before. This is the first time I ever heard of it. Um, but if it does stand, then it becomes a precedent moving forward for many future presidents, basically. And you're going to preemptively pardon people for crimes that people haven't figured out that you had committed. And it's just an odd phenomena, right? And there's a lot of debate what this enables people to do now, that people can now call these people to stand trial or to answer questions, to have the truth come out. But it is interesting that all of these people who are involved with trying to get Trump disqualified from running again for president are now being protected in a kind of a way. It's very interesting and makes you wonder why. And so the January 6th pardons, right? So the people who were involved in uh, the riots of January 6th, 2021, I believe. Uh, a lot of people that I know believe that it's an insurrection. But was it an insurrection? Was it an attempt to overthrow the government? Or was it just simply a protest that got way out of hand, primarily because there were a lot of feds, people working for the federal government, in the crowd, inciting people or trying to get people to engage in acts of violence, right? And so the whole thing just seemed to be uh, they tried to elevate the seriousness of it to make sure that Trump would not be able to run for president again, right? Because if he was involved in this insurrection, then he is ineligible to run for president. And so, was it all part of that phenomena where they came at Trump every which way you could possibly imagine, through the courts, through the law, changing the law just to create a situation where they can accuse him of some kind of crime? So the whole weaponization of law and the courts, was it all just simply to prevent him from running again, to make sure that there was no way, no possible way he could run again? Um, I guess it's for you to decide, but personally, I lean towards it being just a way to try to make it so that he could not run for president. That's the way I lean. And I'm not even one of those Trump fanatics. To me, I just look at the policies that someone will pass. Right? And so I'll cheer and support a move or a policy or deregulation or a repeal of certain laws. I'll celebrate that. But the person, everyone is flawed. Everyone is going to have dirt. I have dirt, right? And so to elevate the person, you run the risk or the danger of having someone point out their flaws, and then everyone turns around and says, "Oh, he's a bad guy. Why are you, worshiping this person as a hero when they did all these other bad things, right?" And so that's the problem you get when you idolize an individual or a personality. So I like to rather focus on specific actions that they do. Is it a good thing or is it a bad thing, right? So Biden pardoning people, okay, generally speaking, that's a good thing. But who he pardoned includes a lot of people who are guilty of some serious crimes. Like, I would even argue that some of these people that he pardoned are actually guilty of this sort of soft coup, right? Where you're going to take over the government or prevent certain things from happening in the government uh, through legal means, right? Like these preemptive pardons, or by having a J6 committee, this kind of thing. It's just kind of interesting, right? So a certain kind of action is very visible. There's certain video that you can show to everyone and say, oh, look, see, it was an insurrection. Whereas the paper pushing type of insurrection goes unnoticed, right? So it's just kind of an interesting dynamic there, right? And it's a lot easier to get people all emotional if you see violence and vandalism. But again, it's not all violence and vandalism, right? Because the BLM and Antifa riots were happening also, but no one seemed to care about that. And so there's this weird double standard that seems to, you know, arise or be seen, but only certain people can see uh, one side of it. And that's because of where they stand politically or how they feel about the people who are involved or who it's about. I hope that makes sense. That if you compare the kinds of pardons that Trump is doing versus the kinds of pardons that Joe Biden is doing, it's interesting, right? There is probably a lot that people can say, a lot of interesting things there. But I'll just leave it at that. Personally, I think that the J6 pardons were completely justified. They were long time coming. A lot of those people were suffering in jail, and I think were not guilty of any violence, right? They just were picked up as part of the dragnet. I follow some of the people who are involved in the J6 thing, and they're not these insurrectionists that one might imagine, people who are trying to overthrow the government. So there's that, right? And so you celebrate the victories, right? And then you are sad when bad things are happening. Like some of the things that Trump would say that apparently says because he's trying to make a deal. I don't get that. Saying things, you're saying things, and you can't, and they have an effect. And to think that it's all part of a bargaining plan or approach is just kind of interesting. I don't quite understand it, but apparently it works sometimes. But I just think on the global geopolitical level, it might not necessarily be the best way. But he did get Netanyahu to at least agree to some sort of ceasefire. He is cracking down on weapons shipments to Ukraine. So there are a lot of things that seem to work in the Trump style, probably because it is not the Washington, D.C. way. And so he's able to cut through all of the BS, all of the red tape, and get certain things done. Another big thing that he did today, earlier, just a few hours ago, was that he signed a document which releases, declassifies, I guess, declassifies the JFK, RFK, MLK assassination files, right? So John F. Kennedy, President of the United States, was assassinated in 1963. Robert F. Kennedy, his brother, was assassinated a few years later. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated in 68, 69, right? We just had Martin Luther King Day a couple days ago. And so he signed the release of these classified documents. Now, there are a lot of questions. Why didn't they do it before? Why couldn't they do it before? Who are they trying to protect? If they know who the guilty parties are, because they have the fall guy, they have the guy who actually supposedly actually pulled the trigger, and so case closed. So then why have all this secrecy over the investigation, the complete report surrounding those assassinations? And so people are saying, hey, it's been a couple hours since he signed it. Why can't we see it? And so a lot of people are joking around saying that they're redacting it. They're taking that black magic marker and crossing out all this information that would compromise people who are still alive, ruin the legacy of certain people, right? And so it seems like they're editing, they're crossing out a lot of important information. But the important thing is, and the question that a lot of people have been tossing around is, did the government do this to their own people, right? If it was the FBI or CIA, I don't know, whatever, some government organization that carried out the assassination of JFK, RFK, and MLK. And if that's the case, then clearly government has run amok. This is why presidents cannot deviate from certain agendas, because if they did, they would be threatened with this kind of assassination, right? And so everyone would fall in line. I mean, it would make sense. Hey, I'm just in it for the politics. I was groomed for this job, and now you're telling me if I step out of line, you're going to assassinate me, right? And so that's something that a lot of people thought was being held over the heads of a lot of presidents, which is why they couldn't do all of the things that they said they would do. But at this point, and I said before that, I wondered if Trump was in this martyr mode, where hey, they already tried to get me. So what do I have to lose? I'm not going to run for president again. They've been trying to kill me. They've been trying to imprison me. I don't care anymore. And so now he's going to do that. And I get that vibe every now and again. I lost it. Like I lost hope that a couple episodes ago. It seems like it's there, especially when he's calling out all of the people who came after him as scum, right? And so in his tweet about Robert Ulbricht, he talked about them and referred to them as scum, and the same scumbags, who came after him. And so maybe that anger is there. It is real. He is going to try to bring justice to all of those people who unjustly came after him. But now that he's signed declassified those files, then what about the 28 pages of the 9/11 report? Right? These 28 pages that no one is allowed to read, only certain people. Thomas Massey, who is a representative from Kentucky, he has read it, and he said every American should read it. And if you read it, you would have a different understanding of 9/11. Maybe that's next. Who knows? In other words, there are so many secrets that the government is holding that we are not allowed to know, so that they can continue to do whatever it is that they're doing. And whenever someone tries to leak some of that information, then they become enemy of the state, right? The government tries to go after them, like the Edward Snowdens and the Julian Assanges. And it's all in the name of national security, right? Very, very interesting times that we're living in. And Trump, as much as half the stuff that he says really bothers me, and I still think that we have a sovereign debt crisis coming, because of all the debt is just so ginormous. How long can we keep this going? And is he going to have the right plan to deal with this instead of making it worse? I mean, all these questions are still there, but nevertheless, you got to take the wins as they come. And so, the pardons that Trump has done, really, wow, that's great. And then you have interesting pardons. It seems like cover-up pardons on the part of Biden. Then you have the release of these assassination files. I am really looking forward to seeing, uh, who was really behind these assassinations. And if it is, in fact, government agencies, then hopefully this will lead to a greater suspicion, greater mistrust of the government that we have in this country, and hopefully a reduction in the size and power of the government that we have now for a better future. And that's it for this episode. I will talk to you guys next time.